There are questions older men often only dare to whisper, not even to others, sometimes not even to themselves. One of those questions is masturbation still normal in old age? Is it bad for the heart? Does it make me weaker? Should I feel ashamed? Maybe you've browsed the internet at midnight in incognito mode, only to close it with more doubt than before. Some say, "You're too old for that now." Others shake their heads with moral disapproval, as if desire is some kind of sin after 60. But what if everything you've ever heard about sexuality in old age was wrong? What if science, not shame, told a completely different story? A story that makes you feel lighter, freer, and truly seen? I made this video not to lecture, but to walk with you through a deeply human truth, that desire knows no age. That the sensation of touching life itself still holds meaning, even when your hair turns gray. In the next few minutes, I'll share the latest research, advice from top doctors, and some raw, real thoughts like a seasoned friend sitting down to talk. Let me walk with you through this journey, to understand your body, to know there is nothing to hide, nothing to feel shame about. And if, after all this, you still have lingering questions, don't keep them inside. Leave a comment, because maybe, just maybe, your story is also the story of many others who are quietly searching. Let's begin, together. There's something most men over 50 feel deeply yet rarely speak of. It's the quiet realization that their bodies are changing. Each morning, they wake feeling just a little slower, a little more tired, and sometimes with a little less desire than before. But that change doesn't come like a storm. It's more like smoke, gentle, slow, persistent, and hard to grasp. I remember Uncle Thon, my neighbor once known for his strength, his athletic build, and the pride he took in his stamina. One afternoon, as we were sipping tea, he sighed and said, "After turning 60, things just aren't the same. It's not that I don't want it anymore. It's that my body no longer responds like it used to." Science has a very clear explanation. After age 30, testosterone, the hormone responsible for male strength, desire, and virility, begins to decline, roughly 1% per year. By the time a man reaches 60 or 70, this deficit becomes noticeable. Muscles fade, bones weaken, fatigue becomes common, mood swings appear, and intimacy becomes more difficult. But here's what I want you to truly understand. This change doesn't mean you're less of a man or that you've lost your worth. It simply means your body has entered a new chapter. One where you must listen more closely, adjust more gently, and shift your perspective with grace. Uncle Thon, after a period of frustration, began practicing gentle exercise, eating more mindfully, and most importantly, began accepting his body with tenderness. He said to me, "I no longer need to force myself like I did in my youth, but I still feel like a whole man. Do you feel what I'm saying? If not, leave a comment and I'll explain more. But if I were you, I'd remind myself this: old age does not steal your manhood. It simply invites you to live more fully, more deeply, and with more kindness toward yourself." I once met an elderly gentleman during a routine health checkup. He was over 70, thin, with a gentle way of speaking. When he sat down, he leaned in and whispered so quietly, almost afraid someone might overhear, "Doctor, at my age, is it dangerous for the heart to still make love?" That question wasn't his alone. Many older men carry the same fear. They're scared, deeply scared, that one wrong heartbeat during intimacy could take their life. I understand that fear. Every now and then, the media flashes a headline: "Man dies of heart attack during sex." "Elderly man suffers stroke in hotel." Stories like these plant themselves in our minds. They grow quietly, turning desire into dread. But science tells another story. The American Heart Association has clearly stated, For most people, sexual activity is about as physically demanding as climbing 2 flights of stairs or walking briskly for a few minutes. And what's even more surprising? When done regularly, sexual activity actually becomes a form of heart care. I once read a 16-year-long study tracking over 10 men. The results shocked even me. Men who had sex less than once a month had a 45% higher risk of heart disease compared to those who kept it up twice a week. What does that mean? It means making love regularly helps you live longer. That day, after I explained this to the old man, he chuckled quietly and said, "So, it's not dying from love. I should fear it's not loving at all, right, doctor?" I laughed too and told him, "As long as your heart can climb 2 floors, then you're strong enough, no need to worry. I'm not telling you this to encourage anything wild. I just want you to know, if you've ever felt afraid like he did, you're not wrong. You're not weak. And you're definitely not past your prime. If you still have doubts, leave a comment. I'm here to listen and respond. To me, a heart that still beats for love at any age is a heart worth celebrating." One quiet afternoon, I sat down for coffee with Uncle Sal, a retired mechanic who'd worked at the corner garage for decades. He sighed, took a slow sip, and said, "Since I retired, I've been waking up 3 or 4 times a night to pee. It's exhausting. Went for a checkup, and they said it's prostate enlargement. But, well, guess that's just old age." Hearing that made my heart ache. Not just because of the discomfort, but because, like many men, Uncle Sal had already accepted the idea that growing old meant constant suffering. That aging equals sleepless nights, painful urination, and drained energy. But here's what he didn't expect. The prostate, that little troublemaker, is actually a part of the body that's quite easy to please. If we just let it do what it was built to do. It might make some people blush, but allow me to speak plainly. Ejaculation, whether through sex or masturbation, actually helps the prostate function properly. It keeps fluid from stagnating, promotes blood flow, and keeps the gland healthy. That's why studies show that men who ejaculate regularly experience fewer symptoms like nighttime urination, weak stream, or painful urination than those who abandon their intimate life. Dr. Abraham Morgentaler, a specialist from Harvard, once said something I've never forgotten. The prostate was made to be active. Regular activity is how it stays healthy. It sounds simple, but it flies directly in the face of cultural beliefs. That intimacy is a luxury for the old. That it's taboo. That we should just forget about it. Back to Uncle Sal. When I told him all this, he fell silent, then chuckled and said, "So the thing I thought I had to give up. Turns out, it's what helps me stop waking up every night." I nodded, and quietly added, "Sometimes, caring for your prostate is as simple as no longer dismissing your own needs." Do you see yourself in that story? If not yet, leave a comment and I'll explain more. But if it were me, I'd whisper this to myself. If the body still speaks to you, it means it's still alive, still waiting to be heard. Even if it's just a small gland buried deep inside. On quiet evenings when I sit alone with a warm cup of tea and an old radio humming softly, I often remember Uncle Tu, the old friend who loved to tell stories of the past. He once told me, "It's strange. Whenever I'm intimate with my wife, I don't just feel stronger. I feel lighter inside." At first, I just smiled and brushed it off. But the older I get, the more I realize there was something deeply wise in his words. Something subtle that many people never learn to recognize. You see, sexuality, including masturbation, isn't just about the body. It's an emotional journey. A moment when you reconnect with yourself, release tension, and feel truly alive. Every time you reach orgasm, your brain releases powerful natural chemicals. Endorphins that ease pain, oxytocin that soothes the soul, and dopamine that brings joy. These aren't just scientific terms. They're the gentle waves of comfort that many older adults thought they'd never feel again. Uncle Tu shared how, after his wife passed, he sank into mild depression. He couldn't sleep. He lost interest in things. He even stopped telling stories to the neighborhood kids, something he once loved deeply. But slowly, just by keeping one quiet, personal habit, gentle, unhurried self-touch, he began to sleep better. His mood lifted, and little by little, he rediscovered joy. He started telling stories again. He laughed again. Science backs this up. Many studies show that older adults who maintain regular sexual activity, in any form, tend to suffer less from anxiety and depression. They even have better memory. They no longer feel useless or forgotten, but instead experience a clear sense that I am still alive. I still feel. I still matter. You see, sometimes what we need isn't sleeping pills or therapy sessions, but just a quiet moment to reconnect with ourselves, to love this aging body in a healthy, respectful way. And if this still feels unfamiliar to you, let me know. I'll share more stories like Uncle Tu's, because to me, the most precious thing in old age isn't memory or strength. It's the emotions that remain whole, just waiting for us to knock, so they can come home again. I still remember that afternoon tea with Uncle Num, an old herbalist from the neighborhood. He joked, "Young folks brag about garlic and honey to boost immunity. But us old folks, we just need to love the right way, and we're good." Everyone burst into laughter. But then, there was silence. Because somehow, in that lighthearted sentence, was a truth too often left unspoken. You see, the immune system, that silent shield in our body, starts to weaken after 60. A mild cold takes longer to heal. A small scratch takes weeks to close. But what few realize is this: sexual activity, including masturbation, is actually one of the body's natural tonics for strengthening immunity. Science has a name for it: the IgA boost. IgA is an antibody, a frontline defender against viruses and bacteria. Studies show that people who have sex regularly, even just once or twice a week, have up to 30% more IgA than those who don't. And the beauty? This doesn't require pills. You don't need the vigor of your 20s. You just need rhythm, gentleness, and love. I shared this with Uncle Num. He laughed out loud. So I wasn't joking, was I? I nodded, then added, "Too bad many people don't know this. Or if they do, they still hesitate. They hesitate because they think, I'm too old for that. They fear others will laugh. They fear their children will judge. But my friend, if something healthy brings joy and boosts your body's defense, why should there be shame? Perhaps what we need most isn't another supplement, but a new way of seeing ourselves. A new respect for our full health, body, mind, and heart. If you still feel unsure, let me know. I'll explain more. But if it were me, I'd choose to grow old, not just with medication, but with awareness, with gratitude for every quiet message my body sends, even the small private ones. I once sat with Uncle Doong, a man in his 70s, neat in appearance, quiet eyes filled with something unspoken. As we played a simple board game, he suddenly said, "I've thought about being close to someone again, but then I stopped myself. I'm old. I shouldn't." When I heard that, I didn't say a word. Not because he was wrong, but because so many men like him have silently shut the door to their emotional life, all because of inherited shame, not taught in words, but absorbed through silence. We grew up in a world where sex was tied to guilt, especially for the elderly. So many men think, I'm a grandfather now. I shouldn't have those urges anymore. Worse yet, they fear their children will look at them with disgust if they found out the truth, that they still masturbate. But let me say this slowly, sincerely. You are not wrong. You are not dirty. You are human. You are still alive. The truth? Studies show that up to 40% of men over 65 still masturbate regularly, not because they're overly lustful, but because they still feel. They still want fulfillment. They still long to connect, even if it's just with themselves. And that doesn't make them weak. It doesn't make them shameful. It means they're honoring a part of themselves that time can't erase. I remember Uncle Dung came back one day, after some deep thought. He told me, I finally get it now. I don't need anyone's permission to feel good. I smiled and said, so you've started living for yourself. If you still find this hard to accept, please let me know. I'll stay and talk more. But if it were me, I'd remind myself every day. Growing old doesn't mean silencing your emotions. Don't let the fear of being judged rob you of your right to live in fullness. False beliefs only survive as long as we believe them. But once you truly understand yourself, you'll see there's absolutely nothing abnormal about a man, whether 70 or 80, still wanting to be touched, still wanting to love, still wanting to be himself. I once asked Uncle Tam, a retired high school principal in the neighborhood, what's intimacy like at your age compared to your younger years? He smiled gently and said simply, it's completely different. But it's beautiful in its own way. Curious, I asked him to explain. He said, it's no longer wild or quick like when I was 40. But now, it feels gentler, deeper, almost like I'm comforting myself. His words stayed with me a long time, because the truth is, in old age, the body no longer functions like it used to. Desire may come slower. The body may take longer to respond. The space between moments of closeness may stretch further. But none of that means you're past your prime or no longer a man. It simply means your body is inviting you into a new chapter of love, one that's slower, more tender, and far more honest. Many people mistakenly believe if you can't perform like before, you should just stop. But that's like saying, if I can't run, I shouldn't walk. That doesn't make any sense, does it? In fact, some men, after 60, find themselves loving more deeply than ever before. Not in quantity, but in meaning. There's no longer a need to prove anything. No pressure to be strong, to last long, or to do it just right. What remains is pure connection, genuine closeness, the kind we often miss out on in our youth, because we're rushing, too focused on performance, too blind to presence. I still remember what Uncle Tam said as he saw me off that day. I don't need to be fast anymore. I just need to feel enough. Enough to know I'm still a man who can feel. His words warmed me, because I knew that, like many others, he wasn't surrendering to age. He was embracing change with love and self-acceptance. If you're in that journey, learning to adapt to these changes, I hope you won't feel discouraged. If you still have questions, ask me, I'm here. But if I were you, I'd remind myself every day, losing an old ability doesn't mean losing value. It means discovering a new version of yourself, Still loving, still whole, just in a different way. I once sat with Uncle Hua, a man in his mid-60s, strong build, but eyes that flickered with hesitation. After a full health checkup, he looked at me and said, "I don't like going to the doctor for that. What if they laugh at me? What if they say I'm too old to care?" His words struck something deep, because sometimes what we fear most isn't pain, but the way others might look at us. Many older men suffer in silence. Painful ejaculation, blood in semen, shortness of breath after intimacy. But they stay quiet, partly out of fear, partly out of resignation. This must be age. And partly because, for too long, they've been taught to see sexual health as optional, something no longer worthy of attention. But here's what I want you to remember. You have the right to ask, to check, to care, no matter how old you are, no matter where the problem lies. If your body is sending you strange signals, it's not being inconvenient. It's not being embarrassing. It's reminding you that it needs attention. I've seen too many cases where men ignored the warning signs, and by the time they finally sought help, the illness had already reached a stage no one wanted. Yet often, all it takes is a simple visit, a brief conversation with a doctor, and everything becomes so much easier than imagined. Just like Uncle Hua, who finally worked up the courage to come in after experiencing some mild pain after ejaculation. It turned out to be a minor inflammation, easily treated in a few weeks. When he came back, he laughed. Why was I so scared in the first place? I'm not telling you this to make you worry. I'm telling you so that you know, going for a checkup doesn't mean weakness. It means you love yourself enough not to ignore the smallest changes. If you've been wondering or holding something back, write to me. Let's talk. And if it were me, I'd gently tell myself every time something feels off, it's okay. Let's get it checked. I deserve peace of mind. There's something I've been wanting to say to you throughout this entire video, and I want to say it slowly, clearly, from the heart. Masturbation and sexuality in old age is not something to be ashamed of. On the contrary, it is a vital human part of whole body health, especially when age starts to paint silver into your hair. Maybe you were taught that those things are for the young, that desire only has meaning with a partner, that after 60, such feelings should be folded away like old clothes. Maybe you were once a strong, confident man, a provider, a leader, and now feel embarrassed as your body begins to change. But hear this, change does not mean the end. It simply means you are evolving. The truth is, you are still valuable. You still deserve affection. You can still feel pleasure. You can still connect with yourself. And more than anything, you still have the right to live an old age that is joyful, whole, and free. Masturbation is not for the lonely. It's not for those who have no one. It is a completely natural, healthy, and private way to protect your prostate, strengthen your heart, improve your sleep, boost immunity, and calm your mind. I still remember the eyes of Uncle Tu, Uncle Sao, Uncle Hua, men who once thought their time had passed, until they realized that intimacy was no longer just about the flesh, but about emotion, about freedom, about the sacred right to be fully human, even past 60, 70, or beyond. You don't need to go back to your prime. You don't have to meet someone else's standard. All you need is to be honest with yourself, to love the body you live in, and not let outdated beliefs cage the life still flowing through you. If you're still unsure, leave a comment. I'll read it. I'll respond. And most of all, I'll listen, like a friend who walks beside you. But if today's story has touched something in your heart, hit the subscribe button. Not just to follow more stories, but to let me know you're still here. You still want to understand. And you, at any age, are choosing to live truthfully. Old age is not what we should fear. What's truly frightening is giving up the right to feel. But if you've stayed with me until this moment, then I believe there's still so much love, so much life, so many new beginnings waiting for you, even in the smallest things. Thank you for staying until the very end. I may be the storyteller, but you are the reason I keep telling stories. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue this journey. To live with joy, to live with strength, to live fully, no matter our age.